Hello, I wanted to start today's video with the story of the only time I quit a tabletop role-playing group for a reason other than a busy schedule. Strap in because it's a bit of a ride. It was a game of Starfinder, which is basically Sci-Fi Pathfinder, which is basically D&D. I had this one mutual friend who introduced me to a couple of guys I didn't know who wanted more people for their role-playing group. When I mentioned I was interested, they filled me in on the background. The characters were all escaped criminals from a maximum security prison who had commandeered this ship together. And the captain was a notorious outlaw who was also kind of crazy and a serial killer. That's how they described him, a serial killer. This will become important for several reasons. I actually got kind of excited when I heard this. I was thinking, it's an evil or at least extremely morally ambiguous setting. This is a chance for me to play a much darker character without anyone in the group complaining. Because I tried to do it before, but one of the players assumed that because my character was evil, he was going to backstab everyone else the first chance he got. Because every evil character is Starscream. And he was constantly metagaming, trying to bully my character into swearing loyalty oaths and stuff. Nearly ruined the whole game. But now it sounded like every character was going to be evil, or at least morally ambiguous. So I designed a character who was basically evil Samus Aran. Not like canon Dark Samus, who's an alien clone monster. I mean a mercenary woman with a power suit and a big laser cannon and no moral compass at all. So we played a gaming session where I met up with the group, and it actually went pretty well. They touched their ship down on an uninhabited planet, and I walked up to their door to hitch a ride. I had to hand over my gun, and they interrogated me. I gave them a bogus story about how I was working security for a CEO of a company when we got attacked by pirates. In reality, I'd been hired by a rival company to kill that CEO and had gotten stranded when the mission went bad. Thanks to telling just enough of the truth that it looked like the evidence supported me, and rolling a natural 20 to bluff, I completely fooled everyone, managed to catch a ride off planet, and offered to pay them when they dropped me off at my employer's. So things were off to a fun, interesting start. Then we started taking jobs while traveling, and things started going downhill. I should mention that Captain Psycho was played by the GM, and not just as a background NPC, but as a full member of the party. Some people might see that as a warning sign right away. I didn't think too much of it because I'd played a game of the Battletech RPG where the GM did that and it had worked out fine. But in this game, some problems started to arise. Remember, I'm not a member of this crew. As far as my character knows, I'm only staying with them for a short time. But when they start taking all these side jobs, they just kind of expect me to accompany them. So I keep dropping these subtle little hints that I'm going to need a bit more motivation besides camaraderie to help them out. I say things like, how much is the reward? Is there anything valuable? And what's in it for me? Some nice low-key suggestions of how to keep my character cooperative and friendly with the group. The problem arises because every time we actually get paid or get some loot, it always goes to Captain Psycho. Not just from people paying us for jobs, that would make sense, but when we find an abandoned ship, every room we search without him has nothing valuable in it. When we finally do get to the room with the good stuff, his character is the one who finds and takes it, and of course he knows exactly what it's worth, because he's the GM. That's kind of annoying enough, but once Captain Psycho collects all the reward, he always puts it in the ship fund. I'm not a member of the crew. I couldn't care less about the ship fund. So my character is getting more and more annoyed. I'm getting a little annoyed, and I realize there's not much in-game reason for me to not ditch these guys on one of the many inhabited planets we stop at, and catch a ride with another ship where the crew spends less time doing a bunch of unrelated crap and ripping me off. And to top it off, one of the other players, the GM's buddy, although he acted more like a lackey or minion rushing to defend Senpai's honor, started getting mad at me because apparently I'm playing the game wrong. He doesn't like that I tricked them, and he doesn't like that I'm playing an evil character. Wiggity woogity what? So I point out that the GM is playing a deranged, escaped serial killer. Hello? And the GM says that doesn't count because his character only killed all those people because he's crazy. And he's actually chaotic neutral. And for not the first time, I start thinking alignments were a mistake, because people pull crap like this. Things finally completely collapsed when we were in this town and a group of stereotypical, poor, distressed townsfolk let us know that they're suffering from stereotypical attacks from stereotypical raiders. So Captain Psycho says in this gruff voice he always uses that sounds like Christian Bale's Batman, but worse, "Yeah, let's go find him. I want to kill something." And I'm just internally cringing at this point. This is not an evil or morally ambiguous campaign. We're taking the most generic good guy adventurer plot hooks imaginable. The escaped prisoner's background, the captain being a frickin' serial killer, and the annoying tough guy posturing is all for show. Like a teenager wearing a lot of eyeliner running a blog with an upside down pentagram on it titled, "Welcome to my dark and twisted mind." But these aren't teenagers, they're grown men. And this is kinda embarrassing. So I ask, is there a reward? And the GM says there's not. So I say I'm waiting in the ship. There's no reason for my character to stick her neck out fighting raiders, especially when Captain Psycho is just going to pocket any loot we find. And the GM's minion throws a fit. He says, "You can't do that, that's not how the game works, you have to do what the GM says." No, that's not how the game works. The player gets to decide what their character does, hence the term player character. I get to choose what my character does, otherwise the GM could just sit in a corner and play with himself. Then he says I can't choose to play some killer bunny.
Well, that's no ordinary rabbit. That's the most foul, cruel, and bad-tempered rodent you ever set eyes on. You tit!
A term he apparently thought was really clever because he kept repeating it, even though it's actually incredibly stupid since the whole argument was about me not wanting to get into a pointless fight. So I say whatever, we'll just go. And I started working on other things and talking to some of my friends who were playing 40K nearby because why the heck would I be invested at this point? The only thing I'm here to do apparently is roll dice. The GM's minion sees this and gets pissy, because of course he does, and says that if I'm bored, I can go hang out with my friends. So I said, I think I will. And I left. And that was it. Never came back to that group for obvious reasons. As far as awful tabletop role-playing experiences go, it's probably pretty tame. But it was enough. Now clearly, many things went wrong in this gaming group. However, I did learn some important lessons from it that I wanted to share. First of all, if you're the GM or DM for a group, don't run a character with the group if you can't resist the urge to show favoritism to your own character. The main lesson I learned, though, was about running campaigns with an evil player character, or even an entire evil-aligned party. Playing evil has kind of a bad rap in the tabletop RPG community, which is funny because a lot of popular creative works in other areas that are heavily inspired by tabletop RPGs have a token evil character. Probably because it opens the door to a lot of very interesting interactions. But on the tabletop itself, many GMs avoid it like the plague. Some even outright forbid players from playing evil characters, which seems like a huge cop-out to me. At least discuss exactly what a player had in mind so you can decide if it's worth giving it a chance or not. After this experience in what not to do, I think I've found the source of 80% of problems with evil characters in campaigns. The other 20% is mouth-breathing edgelords who just want their characters to kill and rape everything in sight.
So hide your kids, hide your wife, hide your kids, hide your wife, hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide your husband, cause they're raping everybody out here.
It all comes down to character motivation. You see, good aligned campaigns allow both GMs and players to be really lazy about character motivation. Really, really lazy. The GM just needs to tell the players whatever random town they're staying in has a problem, and the players will rush to solve it.
Bill, what? Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Their characters' individual motivations don't really matter. Occasionally a character may want revenge because someone killed his father or something, but most of the time that won't be important. Even in campaigns where some characters are good and some are neutral, the neutral characters tend to go right along with the good characters and help people out with a little prodding. It's the same with party teamwork. Good and neutral characters working together seems to happen fairly naturally. Evil characters tend not to work like that. Getting them invested in the group and the quest takes a little more effort. Before going any further, I should probably try to hammer out a somewhat objective definition of what an evil character is, because some people have some pretty strange ideas about it. I would define an evil character as any character who regularly or to an extreme degree deliberately causes unprovoked harm to other people for personal or institutional benefit. I think this is a definition that just about everyone that most people would classify as evil or villainous falls into. For example, Grand Moff Tarkin blows up a planet full of peaceful people to frighten everyone in the galaxy into submitting to the Empire. The Joker in The Dark Knight kills people and spreads mayhem to prove his nihilistic philosophy, and because he thinks it's funny. They have opposing views of law and order, but they both hurt innocent people as a means to an end. And they do it again and again and again because they just don't care. You can't count on a general sense of altruism to motivate such people, like GMs tend to do constantly unconsciously in role-playing games. So to effectively run a campaign with evil player characters, the GM should know what motivates each of these characters and provide them with a suitable motivation to stick with the party and to go on any side quests.
Flowers for Negaduck! I hate flowers. Did I say flowers? I meant skulls. Skulls for Negaduck!
I'll be right there.
And for this reason, it's very important for the GM to meet with each player playing an evil character before the game even begins, to have a quick discussion about what motivates their character. This is something that GMs tend most of the time not to do. In your own campaigns, you've probably skipped this step more often than not, and in more good-leaning groups, you can kind of coast by without it. But in groups with more self-centered characters, it's essential. Doing this and tailoring early adventures to include a motivation for evil characters to stick around and cooperate will, I think, prevent a large majority of the problems associated with evil characters. Sometimes a simple promise of payment or treasure may be enough. Other times it may save you trouble to play the long game, leaving players a string of clues to follow that will lead to something that could bring them great power. You might even have someone blackmail a player into cooperating if they're being particularly difficult or you're feeling particularly mean. Keeping the group together and focused will take a bit more work than if there were a bunch of nice, friendly guys. And once the campaign has been going for a while, the party members are more invested in each other and things have settled into a bit of a groove, things will get a little easier. A little. Evil characters and campaigns have a reputation for being more difficult to handle than good and neutral ones. And to a degree they are. But I don't think that's a good reason to limit players in games where a huge part of the appeal is that anything is possible. So next time you or someone you know wants to try out the darker side of role-playing, discuss what I talked about here with your group, and don't be afraid to give it a try. Just remember, keep character motivation in mind. After all, we all enjoy a good bad guy. At least a fictional one. Hope you enjoyed. As always, if you want to see more, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Bye-bye, everyone.
I am aware that I am an asshole. I really don't care about all of that, though. I got nothing to prove, but honestly, I'm just like you.